Her voice echoed through the café, accusing him of dividing the country, all because of a red MAGA hat. She called the cops, oblivious to the fact that the man in front of her was a soldier who lost his leg defending her right to speak freely. But when the officers called him a hero and revealed who he really was, her confidence shattered. No one could have predicted how this scene would end. Let's start from the beginning. It was one of those crisp, bustling Saturday mornings that made suburban coffee shops feel like the epicenter of the universe. The scent of freshly brewed espresso mingled with the occasional clang of ceramic cups and the low hum of chatter from regulars. The cafe, a mix of mismatched wooden chairs and vintage decor, exuded charm. Sunlight poured through the large windows, illuminating Greg, a 42-year-old former Marine who sat near the corner by the window. His prosthetic leg was tucked discreetly under the table, but the scarred, weathered hands resting on a coffee cup hinted at a man who had seen and endured more than his share. Greg's flannel shirt, faded jeans, and calm demeanor made him blend in, but the red MAGA cap perched atop his short brown and gray hair was another story. It wasn't just a cap, it was a declaration, and in this quiet little bubble of suburban life, it was bound to turn heads. He seemed oblivious to the occasional glances, his focus on the black coffee before him and the newspaper he flipped through with deliberate ease. Then came Karen. She entered with the energy of a self-appointed hall monitor, heels clicking sharply on the wooden floor, her large designer tote swinging like a gavel. In her mid-40s, with a flawlessly coiffed blonde bob, she looked every bit the suburban queen in her pink yoga hoodie and leggings, ready to dispense judgment wherever necessary. Her eyes scanned the room with laser precision until they landed on Greg. The transformation was instantaneous. Her previously neutral expression twisted into one of visible disgust. Her green eyes narrowed, her perfectly plucked eyebrows arched, and she froze mid-step, as if she had stumbled upon a personal affront to her very existence. Karen didn't hesitate. Adjusting her posture, she strode directly toward Greg's table, her heels clicking faster now, like a countdown to detonation. The cafe's low buzz faltered as conversation slowed, heads turning toward the impending confrontation. "Excuse me," she said, her voice slicing through the room. She placed one hand on her hip, tilting slightly forward to ensure she was dominating the space. Greg glanced up, his calm blue eyes meeting her glare. His grip on the coffee cup tightened ever so slightly, but his face betrayed no emotion. "Morning to you too," he replied dryly, tilting his head ever so slightly. Karen wasn't here for pleasantries. She jabbed a manicured finger toward his hat. "Do you think that hat is appropriate in a place like this?" Greg raised one eyebrow, setting his coffee down with deliberate calm. "It's just a hat," he said, his tone almost apologetically mild. "Just a hat?" Karen's voice pitched upward, ensuring that no one in the cafe could miss her indignation. "That hat is offensive to everyone here. You're causing discomfort." Greg leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Seems like you're the only one uncomfortable." He paused, glancing around at the now silent cafe patrons. "Maybe you should try the decaf." That got a stifled laugh from someone at the counter, but Karen didn't flinch. Her cheeks flushed, her righteous fury now fully engaged. "You people," she began, her tone dripping with condescension, "think you can parade your ignorance around like it's something to be proud of. Not on my watch." Greg sipped his coffee, unhurried. When he set the cup down, he met her gaze again, unbothered. "I'm just enjoying a quiet morning," he said. "But you're welcome to try it sometime." The room collectively inhaled. Karen's lips parted, her comeback briefly stalled. The quiet confidence in Greg's tone wasn't what she had prepared for. But Karen was never one to back down. "Oh, you think this is funny? Typical." She gestured broadly, her voice rising with each word. "This is exactly what's wrong with society. People like you." At this point, phones discreetly emerged. A teenager at a nearby table held his iPhone at chest height, pretending to scroll while recording. A woman behind the counter mouthed something to her coworker, their eyes wide with equal parts fascination and disbelief. Greg, for his part, didn't move, his calm demeanor contrasting sharply with Karen's flustered energy. He picked up his newspaper and turned the page, as if dismissing her entirely. The move was too much for Karen. "Don't you dare ignore me!" she nearly shouted, her voice cracking. "Someone has to take a stand." And just like that, Greg folded his paper neatly, set it down, and leaned forward slightly, his blue eyes locking on hers. "Ma'am," he said, his voice steady but carrying an unmistakable edge. "I fought for your right to have an opinion, but I didn't fight to be harassed over mine." The room fell utterly silent, save for the faint whir of the espresso machine in the back. Karen's mouth opened as if to respond, but no words came. A soft murmur rippled through the café as patrons exchanged glances, the tension palpable. And for the first time, Karen hesitated. The final image. Greg calmly lifting his coffee cup, his prosthetic legs subtly visible beneath the table, while Karen's face flushed a deep shade of red as the weight of the moment, and the judgmental stares of everyone around her, finally began to register. The cafe froze as Karen continued her tirade. Phones discreetly emerged to record the brewing drama. Greg remained seated, his composure unwavering, which only fueled Karen's outrage. "You don't even care, do you?" she snapped. "I bet you're one of those people who think you're above accountability." Greg set down his coffee. "Ma'am, I fought for your right to have an opinion, but I didn't fight to be harassed for mine." The comment caused murmurs among the crowd, but Karen wasn't backing down. "Oh, so you're a tough guy now? Playing the victim? Pathetic." At that moment, a young barista tried to intervene. "Ma'am, maybe we can all just—" Karen spun around. "Don't you dare defend him! This is what's wrong with society. Enabling hate!" Unfazed, Greg stood up, revealing his prosthetic leg. The gasps were audible. He didn't say a word, letting the sight speak for itself. Karen faltered for a brief second before recovering. "That doesn't excuse your behavior." Greg shook his head. "This isn't about behavior, it's about a hat, and your reaction says a lot more about you than it does about me." The situation escalated as Karen pulled out her phone and dialed 911. "Yes, I'd like to report a disturbance," she announced loudly. "There's an aggressive man causing a scene in a public place." Greg sighed, running a hand through his short-cropped hair. Meanwhile, whispers in the cafe grew louder. A man in the corner muttered, "She's gone too far." Minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. Karen rushed to them, her tone dripping with self-righteous indignation. "Thank you for coming. That man," she pointed at Greg, "is harassing everyone with his offensive hat." The officers approached Greg, who stood calmly. One officer noticed his leg and his demeanor. "Sir, can you explain what's happening?" Before Greg could answer, another cafe regular interjected. "He was just sitting here drinking coffee. She's the one making a scene." The second officer tilted his head. "Wait, aren't you Sergeant Matthews, from Bravo Unit?" Greg nodded. "Retired now." The officers exchanged glances. "Ma'am," one said sternly, "do you realize this man served in the military?" Karen paled. "I didn't know." "That's the problem," Greg cut in. "You didn't ask.